The execution chamber. The thunderous roar of 50,000 voices echoed through the massive dome of the Grand Colosseum on Xerion Prime. Alien species from across the galaxy had gathered for what General Korath promised would be the final act of justice. The crystalline walls of the arena sparkled under the artificial suns, casting rainbow patterns across the sea of spectators who had come to witness an execution. At the center of the Colosseum stood the Judgment Wheel, a massive rotating disc, embedded with energy spikes that could tear apart molecular bonds. It was designed not just to kill, but to make death a spectacle of agony. The crowd's excitement was electric as hover cameras broadcasted the event across a dozen star systems. Princess Liana Vex stood in chains at the base of the wheel, her pale blue skin marked with the intricate silver tattoos of Zephyrian royalty. Her people had ruled the Outer Rim territories for centuries, known for their wisdom and peaceful nature. Now she was the last of her bloodline, condemned to die for crimes her people never committed. General Korath, a towering reptilian creature with scales that shifted from green to black depending on his mood, addressed the crowd through amplified speakers. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. Citizens of the Galactic Federation, today we cleanse the galaxy of the Zephyrian plague. For too long, these blue-skinned parasites have stolen resources from hard-working worlds. The crowd erupted in approval, though many in the audience knew the truth. The Zephyrians had been peaceful, traitors and healers. Their only crime was possessing technology that Korath's regime wanted to claim for themselves. Fear and propaganda had turned them into scapegoats for every problem in the outer territories. Liana raised her head, her violet eyes blazing with defiance despite the neural dampeners that suppressed her natural telepathic abilities. You speak of justice, Korath, but you know nothing of it. History will remember this day as the moment you revealed your true nature to the galaxy. Korath's scales darkened to deep black, a sign of his rising anger. The prisoner still has spirit. Good. It will make her suffering more entertaining. He turned to his executioner, a massive cybernetic being whose body was more machine than flesh. Prepare the wheel. Let us begin slowly. As the wheel began to rotate with a grinding mechanical whine, something shifted in the atmosphere of the Colosseum. A ripple of energy passed through the crowd, and several spectators near the arena floor suddenly looked confused, as if waking from a dream. Commander Jackson Rivers stepped out of the shadows at the edge of the arena. He was not an imposing man by human standards. Average height, lean build with graying hair that spoke of years spent in deep space. But there was something in his eyes, a quiet intensity that made even the massive alien guards take a step. Back when they noticed him, Rivers had been tracking Korath's crimes across the galaxy for 3 years. The general's rise to power had been built on lies, genocide, and the systematic elimination of anyone who might challenge his authority. The planned execution of Princess Liana was meant to be the crowning achievement of his campaign of terror. General Korath, Rivers called out, his voice somehow carrying across the vast arena without amplification. The crowd fell silent, sensing that something significant was about to happen. I invoke the right of challenge under Galactic Law Article 7. The color drained from Korath's scales, leaving them a sickly gray. The right of challenge was an ancient law that even his corrupt regime couldn't openly ignore without risking rebellion from the more civilized worlds. You have no standing here, human. This is a matter of Federation justice. Rivers walked calmly toward the center of the arena, his hands empty, but his presence commanding attention from every being in the Colosseum. I am Commander Jackson Rivers of the Terran Defense Corps. I speak for Earth and her colonies. We do not recognize this tribunal as legitimate. A murmur ran through the crowd. Humans were still relatively new to galactic politics, having achieved faster than light travel only 2 centuries earlier. Many species still considered them primitive, though their reputation for stubbornness in battle was becoming legendary. Korath's confidence returned as he realized the political implications. Earth has no authority here. Your species was not even consulted in this matter because you lack the wisdom to understand complex galactic politics. Rivers stopped 10 feet from the judgment wheel, close enough that Princess Liana could see, the determination in his dark eyes. "Perhaps not," he said calmly. "But we understand right from wrong. We understand that executing an innocent being for political gain is murder, regardless of what you call it." The cybernetic executioner stepped forward, his arm transforming into a plasma cannon. "Shall I dispose of this interruption, General?" "Wait," Korath said, his mind racing. Killing a human commander in front of 50,000 witnesses would create diplomatic complications he didn't need. "Commander Rivers, you spoke of a challenge. What exactly are you proposing?" Rivers gestured toward Princess Liana. "Single combat. If I win, she goes free, and you face trial for your crimes. If you win, you can execute us both and claim you defeated Earth's finest warrior." The crowd erupted in excitement. Single combat was a tradition honored by most species, and the idea of seeing a human fight one of the galaxy's most feared generals was irresistible entertainment. Korath's scales shifted to deep red as he considered the offer. He was genetically enhanced, standing nearly 8 feet tall with natural armor and 4 powerful arms. Rivers was just a human, fast and clever perhaps, but still just flesh and bone. "You would die for a creature you've never met?" "I would die to prevent injustice," Rivers replied simply. "It's what humans do." Princess Liana stared at him in amazement. She had heard stories of human stubbornness and nobility, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. Through her dampened telepathic abilities, she could sense the genuine courage radiating from this stranger who was willing to sacrifice everything for her. General Korath made his decision. "Very well, Commander. I accept your challenge. When I crush your fragile human bones, it will send a message to your entire species about the futility of opposing me." The arena transformed as automated systems activated. The judgment wheel retracted into the floor, replaced by a circular combat platform surrounded by energy barriers. Weapons of various types emerged from hidden compartments, offering choices to both combatants. Rivers surveyed the options and selected a simple steel blade, its edge gleaming under the arena lights. It was a weapon that would have been familiar to any human warrior from Earth's ancient past, yet somehow it seemed perfect in his hands. Korath chose differently, arming himself with high-tech energy weapons in all 4 hands: plasma rifles, sonic disruptors, and molecular scramblers. The crowd cheered as the general displayed his arsenal, convinced that the human was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. As the 2 warriors faced each other across the combat platform, Princess Liana found herself holding her breath. She had lived for over 200 years and seen countless battles, but something about this moment felt different. This human wasn't just fighting for her life. He was making a statement about what his species believed in. The combat began, with Korath unleashing a barrage of energy fire that would have vaporized most beings instantly. But Rivers was no longer where the shots landed. He moved with fluid grace, his body seeming to bend around the deadly beams as he closed the distance between them. The general's confidence wavered as he realized that fighting humans wasn't like fighting other species. They didn't follow predictable patterns or rely on superior technology. They adapted, improvised, and refused to accept defeat even when logic said they should. Rivers reached melee range and his blade sang through the air, striking with precision that shouldn't have been possible for someone with only 2 arms facing an opponent with 4. But humans had been fighting impossible odds since they first looked up at the stars and decided to reach for them. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the battle raged across the platform. Korath's superior strength and firepower should have ended the fight quickly, but Rivers fought with something the general had never encountered before: the absolute refusal to surrender that had carried humanity from cave dwellers to star travelers in just a few thousand years. As the combat reached its climax with both warriors battered and exhausted, Rivers found himself thinking not of victory or defeat, but of a simple truth that had guided his species throughout their history. Sometimes, standing up for what's right was more important than surviving to see tomorrow. With a final surge of determination that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his physical limits, Rivers pressed his attack. The blade in his hands became an extension of his will, cutting through Korath's defenses and finding its mark. The general fell to his knees, his forearms no longer able to hold his weapons. Around the arena, the crowd sat in shocked silence, unable to process what they had just witnessed. A single human with a simple blade had defeated one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Rivers stood over his fallen opponent, breathing heavily but victorious. "Your crimes end here, Korath. The galaxy deserves leaders who serve justice, not their own ambitions." As medical teams rushed onto the platform and security forces moved to arrest the defeated general, Rivers walked to where Princess Lyanna still stood in chains. With careful movements, he examined the restraints that bound her. "These are neural suppressors," he said, recognizing the technology. "They're designed to be removed only by someone with Korath's genetic signature." "Then I remain a prisoner," Lyanna said quietly, though her eyes showed no defeat. "You fought bravely, Commander Rivers. My people will remember your courage even if I cannot live to tell them of it." Rivers smiled, an expression that transformed his weathered face. "Maybe not." He placed his hands on the restraints and closed his eyes, concentrating in a way that seemed almost mystical. The chains began to glow, their molecular structure shifting under some invisible force. Princess Lyanna gasped as the restraints fell away, her telepathic abilities flooding back like water through a broken dam. For the first time in months, she could feel the thoughts and emotions of those around her, and what she sensed from the human commander beside her left her speechless. His mind was like a fortress built of loyalty, duty, and compassion. She could see memories of battles fought not for conquest but for protection, of sacrifices made not for glory, but for the simple belief that some things were worth dying for. This was what humans called honor, and it burned in him like a star. Tucker. Bonds of unity. The aftermath of the combat brought chaos to the Grand Colosseum. Security forces loyal to Korath clashed with those who had secretly opposed his regime, while alien spectators fled in panic or cheered for the human warrior who had changed everything with a single act of courage. Commander Rivers helped Princess Lyanna to her feet, noting how her silver tattoos seemed to pulse with renewed energy now that her telepathic abilities were restored. "We need to leave quickly," he said, scanning the arena for escape routes. "Korath may be defeated, but his followers won't give up without a fight." As if summoned by his words, armed soldiers began pouring into the arena from multiple entrances. These weren't the ceremonial guards who had overseen the execution. They were Korath's elite troops armed with military-grade weapons and personal shields. "This way," Lyanna said, her telepathic senses picking up the intentions of everyone around them. She could feel the genuine desire to help radiating from some spectators, mixed with the cold determination of those who wanted them dead. "There are allies in the crowd, but we need to reach them first." Rivers nodded, trusting her enhanced perceptions. Together they moved through the chaos, the princess using her restored abilities to guide them past the worst of the fighting, while the commander's military training helped them avoid tactical mistakes that could have proven fatal. They had almost reached the edge of the arena when a new voice cut through the noise like a plasma torch through steel. "Jax, this way!" Captain Thane Blackwood stood at an emergency exit, his weathered face split by a grin that belonged on a pirate rather than a Terran Defense Corps officer. Behind him, a squad of human Marines provided covering fire against Korath's troops, who were trying to cut off their escape route. "About time you showed up, Thane," Rivers called back, returning his friend's grin despite the danger surrounding them. "I was starting to think you'd gotten lost." "Lost? Me?" Blackwood laughed as he laid down covering fire with his plasma rifle. "I was just giving you time to show off for the pretty princess. You always did like an audience." Princess Lyanna found herself smiling despite their desperate situation. The easy banter between the two humans reminded her of her own people's ability to find humor even in the darkest moments. Perhaps these species weren't so different after all. They fought their way through the corridors of the Colosseum, Rivers and Blackwood, working with the unconscious coordination of warriors who had served together for decades. The princess added her own contributions to their escape, using her telepathic abilities to anticipate enemy movements and guide them through the safest routes. Finally, they reached Blackwood's ship, a sleek human vessel that somehow managed to look both elegant and dangerous. As they boarded, Liana couldn't help but notice how the ship's design reflected human philosophy, practical functionality combined with an almost artistic attention to form. "Where to, Captain?" asked the ship's pilot, a young human woman whose steady hands on the controls showed no sign of nervousness despite the chaos they were fleeing. "Sanctuary Station," Blackwood replied without hesitation. "Full burn, Lieutenant. Torres, let's see if these Federation ships can keep up with human engineering." As their vessel accelerated away from Zerion Prime, Princess Liana watched through the viewport as the planet fell behind them. For the first time in months, she was free, but the weight of responsibility still pressed down on her shoulders. "People," she said quietly, her voice carrying the pain of loss. "Korath's forces scattered the survivors across a dozen worlds. Without leadership, without hope, they'll never be able to rebuild." Rivers joined her at the viewport, his reflection ghost-like in the transparent material. "Then we give them hope. We show the galaxy what really happened here, and we make sure justice is served." "You speak as if this concerns you personally," Liana observed, studying his weathered face. "Why do you care what happens to a species you've never encountered before today?" The question seemed to surprise Rivers, as if the answer should have been obvious. "Because it's right," he said simply. "Because someone has to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Isn't that what civilization is supposed to mean?" Through her telepathic abilities, Liana could sense the absolute sincerity behind his words. This wasn't political, calculation, or species loyalty. It was something deeper, a moral compass that seemed to guide every decision he made. Captain Blackwood appeared beside them, having finished securing the ship for their journey. "Sanctuary Station is 3 days away at maximum burn," he reported. "It's neutral territory protected by treaty. Korath's forces can't touch us there." "And after that?" Liana asked. Rivers turned from the viewport to face her directly. "After that, we gather evidence of Korath's crimes and present it to the Galactic Council. We expose the truth about what happened to your people and make sure the survivors are protected." The Council ignored Zephyrian pleas for help before, Liana pointed out, though her tone carried more resignation than bitterness. Why would they listen now? "Because now they have human testimony," Blackwood said with confidence that seemed almost arrogant. "Like it or not, Earth is becoming a major power in galactic politics. Our word carries weight." Liana studied both, men sensing their genuine desire to help, but also their naive faith in justice systems that had already failed her people once. "You truly believe you can make a difference?" Rivers met her gaze steadily. "I believe we have to try. The alternative is accepting that might makes right. And that's not a galaxy I want to live in." Over the 3 days of their journey to Sanctuary Station, Princess Liana found herself learning more about humans than she had thought possible. Their ship's small crew worked with an efficiency born of mutual trust and shared purpose, but they also displayed a casualness that would have scandalized the formal courts of her homeworld. She watched Lieutenant Torres pilot their vessel through an asteroid field with skill that bordered on artistry, all while maintaining a conversation about human music with the ship's engineer. She observed Captain Blackwood planning their strategy, while simultaneously teaching a young crew member how to play an ancient human game involving small wooden pieces. Most fascinating of all was Commander Rivers himself. Despite his obvious leadership abilities and tactical brilliance, he treated every member of the crew as an equal, asking for their opinions and actually listening to their answers. It was a style of command that emphasized cooperation over dominance. "Your species is unusual," she told him on their final evening before reaching Sanctuary Station. They were alone on the ship's small observation deck, watching the stars wheel past as they traveled through hyperspace. "How so?" Rivers asked, settling into the chair beside her. "Most civilizations develop rigid hierarchies as they advance technologically," Liana explained. "The strong rule the weak, the intelligent command the simple. It's considered natural law by most species." Rivers considered this, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe that's why so many civilizations eventually destroy themselves. Humans learned early that our strength comes from cooperation, not domination. We succeed when we work together. Even with other species? Lyanna asked pointedly. Especially with other species, Rivers replied. Every civilization has something unique to contribute. Your people's telepathic abilities, for instance. Combined with human determination and engineering, we could accomplish things neither species could achieve alone. The idea intrigued Lyanna more than she wanted to admit. Her people had always been somewhat isolated, trading with other species but never forming deep alliances. The concept of true partnership across species lines was revolutionary. When they finally reached Sanctuary Station, Lyanna was amazed by what she found. The massive structure housed representatives from hundreds of worlds, yet somehow they all managed to coexist peacefully. Humans served alongside reptilian Korthax, crystalline Veiltar, and dozens of other species she had only heard of in stories. Commander Rivers wasted no time in presenting their case to the Station Council, a governing body that included representatives from all major galactic civilizations. His testimony was detailed, passionate, and backed by evidence they had gathered during their escape from Zerion Prime. But it was Princess Lyanna's own testimony that truly swayed the council. Using her telepathic abilities, she shared not just the facts of Korath's crimes, but the emotions behind them. The fear of her people as they were hunted, the despair of parents watching their children taken away, the hope that flickered even in the darkest moments. When she finished, silence filled the chamber. Even species that had no telepathic abilities of their own could sense the truth in her words, the absolute honesty that no propaganda could counter. The council's decision was unanimous. General Korath would face trial for crimes against sentient beings, and the surviving Zephyrians would be granted full protection under galactic law. More importantly, the false charges against her people were officially dismissed, their reputation restored. As they stood together on Sanctuary Station's main observation deck, watching ships from a dozen worlds prepare to carry news of the decision across the galaxy, Princess Lyanna felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope for the future. "Thank you," she said to Rivers, the simple words carrying the weight of her entire species' gratitude. Rivers shook his head. "Thank yourself. You had the courage to face death rather than accept injustice. All I did was give you a chance to tell your story." "You did more than that," Lyanna insisted. "You showed the galaxy that some beings still believe in doing what's right regardless of the cost." As they watched the ships depart, carrying word of their victory to every corner of known space, both knew that this was just the beginning. The bonds forged between their species in the crucible of the Grand Colosseum would grow stronger in the years to come. Humans and Zephyrians would become partners in the truest sense, combining telepathic wisdom with stubborn courage to face whatever challenges the galaxy might offer. And somewhere in the depths of space, other beings who had lost hope began to believe again that justice was possible. The chains had been tight, the fire had been ready, but when a human warrior roared, "No!" everything changed. The galaxy had learned that sometimes one voice raised in defiance of tyranny could echo across the stars and kindle hope in the hearts of countless beings. In the end, that was humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos. Not their technology or their weapons, but their absolute refusal to accept that things had to remain as they were. They believed in change, in growth, in the possibility that tomorrow could be better than today, and in believing it, they made it true.